Let's call today's Board of Trustees meeting to order at 4:04 p.m. Vicky is absent, so Tony will be filling in. So Tony, could you please call the roll?
Epic,
Here.
Martin,
Here.
McNamee, Nunnally,
Here.
Sheets, here, Spence, Swanson,
Here.
Zibble.
Here.
Thank you, Tony. And you can also have the record reflect that I'm obviously in attendance as well. And if we could please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Zibble, would you read the mission statement for today, please?
Certainly. Laketran is committed to providing quality public transportation services to all Lake County residents with special emphasis on meeting the transportation needs of seniors and people with disabilities.
Thank you very much. Are there any public comments in the room today? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the Laketran Board of Trustees Board meeting minutes of October 25th, 2021?
Motion.
Motion made by Ms. Nunnally. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Zibble. Tony, if you could please call the roll.
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
McNamee, Nunnally,
Yes.
Sheets,
Abstain.
Spence, Swanson,
Abstain.
Zibble.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And at this time, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Lisa for the operating capital and STS.
Okay, so I have put together a slide, and again, this is just for your information for today. If you have any comments or questions, please express them to me and I will try to answer them as much as I can. This budget will be brought before the board in December, of course, with any changes or updates that we would like to add to it. So what I have for you is I did an overview. Basically, I've estimated the revenues to be around $34,428,156 for 2022. And I'm estimating the expenses to be around $22,457,125, leaving an operating income of $11,971,031. And the main reason for this will be due to the grants that we received, the one-time grants from the FTA and a few miscellaneous things. Sales tax was much higher this year than it has been in the past. The capital expenses for the federal portion is estimated to be around $2,392,005. The capital expenses for the local share is estimated to be about $19,606,417 for a total capital expense budget for 2022 of around $21,998,422. And then our STS, which is our special transportation services, we're estimating just around $200,000 in revenues and expenses. Oh, oops, going too fast. Okay, so what I basically did is I took a picture of, basically it's very similar to the Schedule B, which is also in your packet on page 18. And this basically is our operating revenues, which is our fares and any type of contracts that we have that has to do with the ridership. And we're estimating to be at about, I'm estimating to be at about $2,013,000. Last year, we estimated to be around $2,037,000. And this year, I'm projecting that far right-hand column, 2021 projection right before the percentages, at about $1,886,000. So this is kind of similar to last year, but it is a growth rate based on where we're at today of about 6.77%. And that's because it's still, we don't know where we're going to be with the pandemic. This year, we didn't go where we thought we would be with the we thought the pandemic would get a little bit better sooner. We are seeing it pick up towards the end of this year. I know for a fact when we get to the STS, the senior centers and stuff are starting to ride more. And that's one of the reasons why I've increased the budget a little bit on the STS. We have some contracts that we're starting to, some of them came through, some of them didn't for the STS. And those contracts are now being signed by the senior centers. So they are in September and October writing more than we had originally thought they would. And on the second page, again, this is a snapshot also on that same, similar to the Schedule B. This is our traditional revenues or our non-operating revenues. And this is basically our sales tax, which is our main revenue source. And then any state funding or any of our federal funding. And then some miscellaneous items like the interest miscellaneous and maintenance outside services. And we're projecting to be at around $32,400,000 for 2022. We were at 22 last year. When we did this budget, we didn't know about all the grants that were coming through for the, due to the COVID. So, and that's really what's driven our cash balance up. And then on our projection, we're estimating to be right around 29 million, almost 700,000. So comparing our revenue based on where we were last year, we're up significantly, like 43%, but we're estimating about a 9.22% growth over where we are today. And then summarizing that up to our total revenue, our total operating revenue versus our non-operating, and total revenue being at 34 million for 2022 versus the 24,696 in 2021 budget, and projecting to be right around 31 million, almost 600,000. Our operating revenue, the fair growth is up about, I'm estimating about $127,000. The non-operating, even though it's an increase, there are a couple decreases because there's a regular state revenue stream that we used to get for E&D that we are no longer getting. And the rest of it is really based, the 2,666,000 is really due to the COVID FTA grants. So before I move on to the expenses, is there any questions regarding the revenues? And I do want to add on too, because even after this budget was already done, I know that there was something put out that we probably are getting about another $900,000 in the federal, which is not included in here. We didn't know that before we went and did the budget. So again, the budget it's a moving document. We try to make our best guess estimate based on what we have, and I can certainly work to add that back in there if we need to before December to, give a better projection going forward. But I do know that the interest is putting that towards service. So. So this is our snapshot on our expenses. For 2022 on the far left-hand column, we're estimating to be at 20,457,000. Last year, we estimated to be at 22,405,000. So we're literally only $51,000 more than where we had budgeted to be last year. I know I made that statement that we really didn't know that it was really going to be a guess for 2020 with the pandemic, where we would end up. On the far right, under the projection, we're estimating to be at 18,671,000. So the budget is about 20% more than where we are today. And I'll explain that when we get into the detail of the expenses, but we're about 51,000 more than where we thought we would be last year. So obviously the pandemic is still affecting us, but we are taking our best guess. So what happens when we do this budget, each department participates. So they go through, they give all their best guess estimates on all their expenses and stuff. And then I kind of put the pieces together and we come up with this. So when I was going through, I thought it was fairly reasonable. I will say probably the thing that should stand out the most for this year is going to be the fuel and oil. That's really up high compared to where we were last year. We locked in at a rate by hedging, and we really don't know exactly where we'll be at this year. We're going to do the same thing to try to lock in, but we don't know exactly what that's going to be. So of course, that's still an estimate, but we do use, now we have the electric buses in place. And those just started coming in. We really don't have a lot of history on those yet. So it is an estimate, but we do have electrical that we're using for fuel. We have propane, we have gasoline, and we have diesel. So, and those are broken out on our estimates in the detail of the expenses that I will address when we go through. So netting that all out for the revenues versus the expenses versus our operating income, and then comparing them for the 2022 budget versus the 2021 budget versus the 2021 projection. So, and I will say that 21 projection in 22, again, those are mainly due to the extra grants, because we did get 3 of those grants for the pandemic. So on the wages, the detail of the wages, our wages are down versus our estimate for 2021-22 budget versus 2021 budget. And the main reason is there was a organizational chart that was passed by the board in November of 2020. And we did not hire all those people. We did not need them at the time. That's why the expenses for wages and salaries are down also for the projections. But in this budget, we're estimating a 2% annual increase, which was in the union contract, and then steps for the drivers. Unless people have reached their steps, they just get the 2%. I also put in our packet that's in your board packet, the organizational chart. I included that as attachment E for your reference. But the one piece that we didn't budget for all of the positions would be our drivers. We have 103 full-time drivers and 101 part-time drivers that are approved by the board in that organizational chart. And we are estimating that 95% of the full-time drivers and 85% of the part-time drivers will be on average what we have for drivers during the year of 2022. So, and all the other positions we are planning on being at full staff, but there, sometimes there is turnover and stuff. But right now that's what we're planning. And I think for the most part, that's where we're pretty much going to be towards the end of this year, between November and December. And basically with all of this in place, it's about a 15.3% increase from 21 to 22. But it does not put Laketran back to pre-pandemic levels, but for ridership, but it's getting us closer. And we are seeing that growth towards the end of the year. Okay, and then as far as health insurance, which is also under the benefits, our increase came in for our group at around 6.9%, which is pretty good. Our plans, I kind of just gave a little bit of history on here just to give you an idea of our demographics for our health insurance. About 53% of the people who have insurance with Laketran are singles, 7% are employee child, 16% are employee spouse, and about 24% are families. We also, and I know Ben's discussed that before, and we put it in that union contract. We do offer an incentive if people don't have our health insurance. We have about 12 people who participate in that. So, and I'm sure all those factors together have helped keep our healthcare costs down, in addition to all the wellness that we do through Health Tip. Plus, we're self-insured with Health Tip. For our services is increasing due to the new facilities. We have Lakeland and Wickliffe that we added. So things such as plowing, facility maintenance, etc. These will increase, and we're just estimating about 11% due to these 2 new facilities. And then we have our normal services increases. And I know this year things are up higher. They're expecting to be up higher for next year. So that's why the increases are slightly higher. Around 7% is what we're estimating for all of the services, the supplies, and the fuel is probably a little bit higher than that. But utilities would be the other one. So supplies, we're up about 13.6%. The majority of this increase is due to fuel costs. Laketran currently uses the following fuel types, which I discussed: diesel, propane, electric, and gasoline. And we kind of did a small breakdown just to kind of give you an idea. Keith does that. And then we have our oil and lubricants. So this all together would come to about 3,048,000. So of course, like almost 1.8 million is fuel of that. The rest of the other supplies is increasing about 7%. Those types of things. Software, postage, parts for the buses. Yes, Lee.
Probably a question.
Okay.
This is probably a question for both you and Keith. What do you see happening to propane? I've seen all this things on the news about propane is going to skyrocket, on and on and on. Are we covered by our contracts, or are we going to put them out of business?
No, we're not covered by the contract. One of my presentations is propane for next year. Propane's bid off of a rack price.
I'll withdraw my question until you're.
Okay, good.
Okay. So we have the breakdown for the fuel, and then the other miscellaneous supplies. I gave some descriptions. And again, obviously, if it doesn't increase that much during the year, we won't spend it, but that's what we're estimating just based on market rates and what's going on today. Utilities and insurance. Well, utilities, of course, we're estimating an increase just because of the economy and what's going on. Insurance, we're able to control a little bit more because we've been insured through OTRIP. And that's pretty much remaining flat. There's not too much change in the OTRIP insurance. And I will say that's kind of a good thing that we invested in long, even before I was here. And it's been very beneficial for Laketran, and there's been a huge savings with that. And I believe that's some of our reasoning for why we went to health tip when we did the health insurance through the state also. Purchase transportation, this would be our Breckenridge contract. We are estimating only to be at 200,000. And again, this still has to do with the pandemic. It's seniors that ride on this transportation service. And again, it has picked up towards the end of the year. We're projecting that we could be back to normal on this particular mode of transportation for next year. And that we do have a contract with that, and that's what our price is. So that's what we put into the budget, which is the 318,325. Okay, and then miscellaneous expenses would be more like dues and descriptions, professional development for the board, for the employees, advertising and marketing. And of course, this is going to go up a little bit this year just because we were not traveling much at all this year. Next year, it's not just about the travel, but your dues and subscriptions, those are going up. Those would be like our Ptas and our different types of things that we participate for the transportation. And then advertising and marketing is pretty much about the same, might be a slight increase. So before I move on to capital, will we have any discussions about besides Lane's question that Keith's going to address in his presentation about the fuel for propane? And I also have in there too, regarding the revenue, the sales tax, which I always include is in here, is in your packet to kind of give you an idea when we estimated that revenue. I did only go with 2.3%, and I felt that was a good estimate. Usually I only do like 1% because there's really usually not a lot of growth, but I didn't want to go with the increase for 2021 because it was all over the board if you look at the chart. But 2.3 was basically the 5-year average for 19 and 20 for sales tax revenue. So, and that's our main source of revenue. So again, it could be higher, it could be lower. But expenses, is there any concerns over the 6 to 7% that we've been budgeting based on the markets? Yes, Donna.
The headquarter renovation expansion, Federal contribution 7%, local 93%. I thought that was all federal or mostly federal.
For the headquarters expansion,
Mhm.
well, I believe the conversation when we first started out with the headquarters was all the pandemic money that we were getting. Because we were getting it and it's going into our cash balance that we would use, basically, we were using that to offset that headquarters piece. But the way the grant was written, and it was written as being reimbursed for operating expense, and the reason why we did that was to get the money in and out because our operating expenses we have every single month and we could draw it down. So we've drawn that money down and we've invested it in that, and that's why we have it in our cash balance now. If we were doing it for the headquarters piece, we would not have it right now. It would be sitting with the FTA. And I
So-
think the idea was to try to get the money, and then because those grants were one-time grants, they wanted you to use it where you could spend it the fastest or draw it down as quickly as possible.
So it's because technically the way you allocated it, technically it's local funds reimbursing it, but really that money still came through the feds.
Yes, and we have it, and so however the board chooses to spend it.
Yeah, so we took the federal grants, we spent them on operating. What we would have normally spent on operating, we put in the bank as local cash. So the reason we did that was because local cash has infinite flexibility. So if we didn't pursue the project, we changed the project, local cash can be used for whatever. But ultimately that revenue came to us. We set it aside for headquarters someday, but it's flexible as local cash.
Thank you for that clarification.
So Lisa, I understand we were talking about the operating budget, but now you had the capital screen up there and then Donna asked a question
Okay.
about headquarters. My question is just in general, why is the headquarters even on here and how was the number derived? Just because we established the committee just had their first meeting. I don't think, at least in my opinion, there's any gauge on if it's going to be a $5 million project, an 18.7 million, or what shape the project is going to be in. So I was a little surprised to see it throughout the budget.
Sure. So when we put the capital budget together, and that's basically Andrea having conversations with everybody within the organization to go over the needs. And this budget was kind of, because originally it was in 2021 and we took it out, moved it to 22, I believe, because we have spent some money on the headquarters as far as the professional services go. And that's in this year. We can't move that because we've spent it. When we put the capital budget together, the capital budget's put together as a plan, just like all budgets, to give you an idea of what the plan is for next year. So even though you approve the capital budget, nothing is going to get spent regarding headquarters because it's over the $25,000 limit. It would have to officially, any of the capital projects that are over 25,000 would still officially have to be brought before the board to be approved. So I guess it's a plan that we're asking the board to approve, that this is what the goal is. Doesn't necessarily mean you still have to obligate to the headquarters. And I guess that's why it's put in there. It could be taken out and you could say, just put it in there when we approve it. That's fine too. But I think the idea was, you're looking ahead for the whole year to give you an idea and update the board on what the plan is. Doesn't mean that still can't be revised if you say, I only want to spend 12 million, I don't want to do that. Or if you say, I want to spend 20 million, it can get adjusted and changed as the committee or the board sees fit.
My inclination, and can't speak for anyone here, is I don't know if I would include it because any
Okay.
member of the public that would look at this would say they're doing a $18.7+ million project. But that's my opinion. That's
Right.
my colleagues and
And I guess I look.
or analyze financial statements. So I'm not trying to be critical. of
No,
what's-
no, not at all. And again, this is a way for me, I think for the organization, for all of us, for Ben, for the board, is a way to communicate to you what has been, I mean, because we didn't just decide today to have headquarters renovation, this is a long this is a long process that's been going on. So it's been in the works, and how we choose to go forward. Again, that's part of the reason why we bring this before the board in November, to get your comments, concerns, and then we can adjust it for December so everybody can be comfortable with being able to pass that budget. It's important to pass that budget. For me, my feelings were hurt last year when John didn't want to pass it because I wanted everybody, it should be a unified document that that we're aware of. But any budget, there's nothing written in stone. It's strictly a budget, a guideline for moving forward. So I have no problem taking that out if each, after the conversation, when I go through the rest of this, if that's what you want me to do, then I will certainly do that.
That would also be my vote.
Would it be? Okay.
Mine too.
Your two?
I don't believe it belongs in the budget.
Okay. Is that the only item in here? Because I did list out in detail what made up those amounts.
Well, from my perspective, and I'm coming at this obviously as a newbie, but I wouldn't call this a budget anyway.
Okay.
It's more of a wish list than anything until it
Okay.
gets approved. Budget to me implies it's been approved already, and at least in my mind. So I'm a little uncomfortable with the verbiage, but I'm really uncomfortable as it relates to saying we're going to spend. In the public's view, anybody who looked at this would say, well, they're spending $19 million, $18 million. It's been approved.
Okay.
I don't think that plays very well.
Okay. It's perfectly fine. Yes, Donna.
Assuming we take the headquarter renovation expansion off of this list and put it on the operating side, A, where does it go? And B, what happens to that bottom line number on the capital side? What does it look like if you're moving it?
Well, just because we take it off of here doesn't mean that we wouldn't have it. I mean, we have the estimate, so we still have it. We just set it to the side until the board decides yay or nay, whether it goes anywhere, but we could just take it off of here because the board will be asked to approve that amount. And then if we take it off, then we would just lower those bottom line numbers. So it would be about 19. So you're looking at what, 19, 20, 21, 22, about $3 million budget overall.
That's fine, that's what you just said. But what I'm asking you is, if you take it off this analysis, where do you put it on the operating side? And what does that do to the bottom line number?
Well, it doesn't do anything right now to the bottom line number because it hasn't affected the cash or anything. We're not, because we haven't spent it. So I think I'm not sure if that answers your question, but this is money we have not spent. So
I get that, but where are we showing these numbers though?
I think the objective would be to not show it until the board has approved it. And so the place that you might see it is if we did a cash projection for the future and we took headquarters out of that, the cash available for the future would go up. But you're not going to see it. What I think the board is communicating is we don't want to see it right now because the board hasn't approved it.
But you still have to account for it that we have it.
Well, we would account for it in our total cash balance.
Okay.
But some of that,
There's the answer.
but some of it is a projection also. So the cash that we have will be in our cash balance.
So if it's in our cash balance, that increases the cash balance to what?
Yeah,
It's already in the cash.
it hasn't decreased the cash balance because we haven't spent anything
These
yet.
are possible expenditures for the year.
Got it. Thank you for the clarification, both of you, that I wasn't getting.
No problem.
So, okay, so on this, then we will take out the headquarter renovation and expansion, and we will update the capital budget to reflect that for the December board meeting. Is there anything else?
I think I might, from what I heard from the board, I think maybe we change this to call it the capital plan versus capital budget. Because Gary's correct, none of these things, we've traditionally called it a budget, but we don't spend any of this money independently without individual board approval. So it probably is better called a plan than a budget, because a budget does imply that we are going to, the board has given us permission to spend these dollars. And even though we've called it a budget, that's not how we've operated. So it may be better that we change the name of this particular portion to the 2022 capital plan. And then when we ask for individual approval of each item, that's when it's been approved to be spent by the board. That might be a little clearer communication.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
That
Thank you. That-
clarifies the whole issue.
Yeah, because we don't, in the past and in this particular document, we are not tonight asking you to approve any of these expenditures at all. They would all be brought back to the board individually for approval. So I think that would help.
Tremendously. Tremendously.
Okay, so I will adjust that for everybody. Okay. So basically, the capital budget, as we will call it, a plan, is to provide an overview and an estimate of the projects that Laketran will pursue. The projects that are pursued are based on need and grant funding. The capital budget is usually updated monthly and reports on the status of grant applications and if a project's priorities have changed, because sometimes we have a priority and something else comes up that's needed more and it gets changed. That's also reported each month in our packet. Actual purchases and contractual agreements over 25,000 will be approved by the Board of Trustees on an individual basis or brought before the board for approval in accordance with the 2 CFR FTA circular and the ORC 306.43. Laketran will pursue all grant opportunities for which it is eligible. And our 2023 through 26 capital budget or plan estimates have been included just as an update for what is known today. Yes, Gary. Mr. Swanson.
Quick question for you. I see here, we're talking again about the capital plan
Right.
on the status of grant applications.
Mhm.
And then if project priorities have changed, the third bullet down. And I noticed in the packet that there was discussion that we're having discussions with the appropriate authorities about grants for the headquarters project. That sort of jumped out at me.
Yes.
On what basis does that happen? And are we selling something before we're allowed to? If we get a grant that says this is for the headquarters, and then we change the nature of the headquarters project as we move through this, what happens to that grant process? Do we get sidetracked? Does it go back? Can you give me a quick overview of
Yeah,
that?
so there's a decent amount of flexibility. If the board, does in fact decide, not to move forward with the headquarters project and we are awarded grant funding, we can give that grant funding back. It does take time for that funding to be obligated, and especially at the federal level, especially with the potential size of our headquarters project, is unlikely that we would receive a full funding amount in that, we would receive a grant for $20 million. So, if we received $5 million, and the actual project moves forward in some fashion, whether it's just a fraction, we have a lot of flexibility at that point. So, that's always something we can talk about with FTA, if in the event that a grant is awarded. You're welcome. Yes.
My
Donna's
question-
got a foot.
My question is for Ben. Andrea, if I just understood her, indicated that it could go back to the FTA. But I was understanding from our special meeting that it would not go back to the FTA because of the way you had allocated it. And it's technically into the operating.
I think those are different questions. The grant that Andrea was talking about would be a new grant that was specifically for headquarters. The grants that you're referring to were grants we received as part of COVID that were, when we wrote those grants, they were written to provide operations. And so those are in the books. They're not going back. The cash goes into our bank account and then it's done. The feds can't get their hands on it.
Okay, so you've applied for other grants or not yet for capital projects?
We were applying for grants throughout the design phase of the headquarters project. So there are a number of applications that are out there floating around still. Some we have received money for, like the ventilation grant. Others we haven't. Usually grants are relatively flexible. So once you apply for one, so let's say the board said, look, we want to do some headquarters maintenance for $2 million. The grant can be used to do that type of thing. Or say the board says we want to do a $25 million, crazy project. The grant could be adjusted to do that project. So the grants have a lot of flexibility, and there's been cases where we received grants in the past for a project and the intentions change. And then we have a conversation with FTA and say, hey, the original intentions of this grant have changed. Usually what we try to do is find a substitute project, like a bus replacement or a bus purchase that fits inside that big bus or that big grant category, and ask FTA if we can switch those funds. And they have always said yes. A good example is a long time ago, while Terry was our grants person, she applied for money to expand the Menor Park and Ride, which I couldn't tell you how that happened, but we knew we were not going to do that. And so we had roughly $350,000 to build a bigger parking lot. We talked to the grant sponsor, which in that case was NOACA, and said, hey, we're not going to do this, but we need to buy buses. Can we move that money over to buses? They said yes. We went about our business. So we always seek maximum flexibility when we apply for grants, but ultimately, to Gary's question, if we received a grant for headquarters and the board said we don't want to do any headquarters projects, the two answers would be we tell FTA that we no longer want that and we give it back, or most of the time we would transition that over to another project that we wanted to move forward.
I appreciate all this clarification, Ben, because this was a major sticking point, even with some employees who came to that meeting. And to understand that we wouldn't necessarily lose that money that was originally allocated to the building. And I felt it was necessary to clarify that so that everyone who's listening to this meeting is on the same page.
Yeah, that
Appreciate your time doing that.
that money is, over half of it is spent, and it is not, once it's in our hands as local dollars, it doesn't go back. It's our local money.
And I appreciate your distinguishing between that grant and the others, as you just did. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions on the capital or concerns? Okay. So the last piece is the STS budget. And so basically, we're estimating, obviously, the main revenue source, the only revenue source is really the fares that we get will offset some of the expenses. And when we don't have those fares, of course, some of those expenses are fixed, like our insurance and just some maintenance on the buses and stuff like that. And that's pretty much for 2021. When you look at the projections on the far right there, that's basically what that was. There was a little bit of revenue in there, and we're starting to pick up. You don't see September's in there. I didn't have all the September numbers because we were still in the process of getting those contracts finalized with the senior centers. So you will see it in October, at least for those couple months, to give you an idea. And I believe we had it at 117,000 last year. I'm boosting it up to 200,000. And of course, this is an estimate. And obviously, if we're doing really good in this particular area with the STS services, we may have to come back before the board to adjust that budget accordingly at that time. And other than that, I really don't have a summary, just basically for the STS, which is basically just summarizing it. So, yeah. So unless the board has any other questions, I will certainly address all your concerns and issues, and I will change the budget, capital budget plan and take out the headquarters for you.
So this is just a reminder for everybody, if you want to have additional detailed conversations about things you see in there with Lisa or I or anybody else, between now and December is the time to do that. We would love to talk to you about any questions you have, about any concerns you have. It is important to understand that as a governmental agency, we have to have an approved budget. So we have to approve something in December. If it's different from this, that's fine. But we can't go into January without a budget because we can't write POs, we can't pay bills, we can't pay employees. So if you have questions or concerns or any issues you'd like to address, we would be happy to meet one-on-one, phone calls, Zoom, whatever you'd like. As Lisa mentioned, this is a plan for the future. So please reach out to us to let us answer your questions. But overall, employees are the biggest part of our budget, and we tried pretty hard. Those expenses are down for next year. So budget increase is only $51,000, which is, I thought pretty good to not be increasing our budget by much more than that during COVID. The gamble is, we still don't know what ridership's going to do. Dial-a-ride ridership is what drives driver numbers. So this is our best guess as to what will happen next year. But if there's something you think we guessed wrong at or would like to change, absolutely reach out to us and let us know.
I just have one more update because when we had the audit this year, we were under the impression that the state auditors would be doing the audit again next year. And I think they really thought they were too. But it came around October, so they decided to put it out for bid. And the state auditors are in charge of that bid. They do the bid process. They're in charge of it. Even though we have somebody audit us, they still go over that audit. So they put it out. They decided to do it for 5 years. It went out to bid, and Zupka did win that bid with them. But that will be being brought before the board next month for your approval because it's a 5-year contract. And I want to say it was like 104,000 or something, but Zupka was also the lowest bidder of all the bids. But because it's a professional, it doesn't always have to be the lowest. It's the quality of the bid too. But I just wanted to give you guys a heads up on that, just so you know.
Great. Any other budget questions for Lisa? Okay, I think you can go right into the September financials.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so nothing's really much is going on. More than that really stands out. So for this is through September. We budgeted to be at about $18,975,965 for our total revenue. Our actual revenue right now is about $28,020,822. So we're about $9,044,857 more than budget, again, mainly due to the grants. On the expense side, we budgeted to be at $16,595,000. We are right around 13 million. So we're about 20% less than where we had budgeted, again, due to the pandemic. Obviously, we're not spending, we only spend it if we need to. Okay, so overall, our total revenues year to date versus our total operating expenses and then our capital expenses, with the cash that's been divvied out for 2021, we're at 11,648,000 with a net income. If you take into consideration depreciation, again, depreciation is estimated in 2021. 2020, it's actual. We do reconcile all that stuff at the end of the year and depreciate what we have to. And then as far as the cash balance, kind of gives you an idea. Our operating is, I put the 7,987,000. It's based on a formula that was approved by the board regarding, I believe it's 5 months worth of cash based on last year's total expenditures. I have the headquarters piece, so if the board is asking to take that piece out, I will take that out, and on all this money between the capital and the headquarters will just be put either I'll put it in for the capital piece I might keep separate because the capital there are the obligations that basically have been approved by the board from expenditures for 20 and 21. Because it's a capital expenditure, it's not always going to be spent in the same year that it's been approved, because it might take more than 1 year. And then the headquarters piece, I'll just take that out and just leave it as a general cash balance for capital or operating expense. And then, of course, our STS budget. And then our STS, basically, year-to-date, we're at about 18 million in revenue. Again, September's is not in there because we didn't have that contract finalized to be able to do, but we did have revenue for that month, and I will update it. It'll be included with our October together. And the total expenses are at about 43,000. Again, that kind of gives you an idea of what our fixed costs are. Some of that is based on ridership, but a minimal for this year. And then again, we've broken out our capital projects, but again, I'll take the headquarters piece out of here too, going forward. So we have an idea of where we are just based on our regular capital projects, which is mainly vehicles, and then, some maintenance items for the buildings. So is there any questions regarding our September financials for this year? Or any other updates for this one?
Okay, thank you, Lisa.
Yes.
Did you have someone have a question? Oh, sorry. At this time, is there a motion to approve the September 2021 financial statements subject to audit? Motion made by Mr. Swanson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. McNamee. Tony, if you could please call the roll.
Epic,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Nunnally,
Yes.
Sheets, Swanson, and Zibble.
Yes.
That's great. Thank you, everyone. At this time, I think I'm going to turn the meeting over to Keith to talk about fuel.
I'm going to talk about diesel and gasoline. Propane will be all on Keith. So it's a very fuel heavy month this month for the board. Every year, Laketran participates in a joint procurement for diesel and gasoline fuel. And we partner with our local neighboring transit agencies, Akron Metro, Ptas in Portage County, SARTA, which is in Stark County, WRTA, which is Youngstown, Medina County, and new this year is TARTA. They're in Toledo. This year, Ptas is the lead agency on the procurement. So this is a routine board item. This is a routine purchase, but it is an important purchase because, as just learned from Lisa, fuel is a big part of our yearly budget. So for some of our newer board members, I wanted to make you aware that this procurement for diesel and gasoline fuel is a little different than other procurements that we do. So first off, as I mentioned, this is a joint procurement. We are working with those other transit agencies to purchase fuel so that all of our agencies can take advantage of economy of scale. The other important thing to note is that we are asking the board for the authority to enter into a contract before the bids are due. The way this procurement is structured is that bids are going to be due on December 8th, and we have until 3 p.m. on that date to enter into a contract with the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. If we do not enter into a contract at that date, we essentially have to renegotiate the price, and we're losing all of the benefits of being part of a joint procurement. So the economy of scale, the low price of that day. So that is why we are here today asking you for this authority, because we need to be able to award the contract on December 8th. Procurements benefit all the agencies who are participating because, as I said, they can lock in a fixed price for fuel at a lower than retail price. That price will last us the whole year. And using one fuel vendor provides us a lot of operational efficiencies that save our organization both time and money. So this chart here shows Laketran's bid price, our bid price with taxes, and compared to the US retail price. This is for 2021, so every month up until September, which is the data that I had. And the data is from the US Energy Information Administration, so EIA.gov. So Laketran, like everybody, we pay fuel taxes, but unlike everybody, we get all of our fuel tax back except for 1 cent per gallon. So just so you can kind of compare apples to apples, the kind of lighter dotted line in the middle is Laketran's bid price for diesel and gasoline fuel with the taxes added in. And as you can see, it's still much lower than retail pricing, which does include taxes. I'm not the type of person that just because we've always done something a certain way, that's the way it should be done. I think that any long held procedure is always worth a second look to make sure that is that what we should be doing. So I performed this, kind of basic analysis to see, we've got this is historical fuel pricing from 2017 to 2021. It compares the US average diesel and gasoline retail pricing, our bid pricing, and then our bid pricing plus taxes. Diesel is in the red, gasoline's in the blue. The solid line is our bid price without taxes. The tiny dotted line is the bid price with taxes, and kind of the larger dotted line is US retail pricing. So as we can see, Laketran benefits very much from bidding out a low fixed price gallon price for fuel on an annual basis. Even in 2020, no one expected the pandemic to hit, and fuel pricing bottomed out, and we saved money on our diesel fuel by bidding it ahead of time. And we broke even on gasoline. So I don't think you can ask for more than that when it was such a volatile, crazy year. And really benefited this year because fuel was low last year. We always bid out at the end of the year for the following year. Fuel pricing was very low and it has since skyrocketed. And so we have benefited dramatically by entering into a yearly contract for fuel. So I hope that you will agree with me that this is a very beneficial thing for Laketran. There are financial and operational benefits to bidding out fuel at a fixed annual cost. And it is my recommendation that the Board of Trustees approve the resolution so that we can enter into a contract to purchase fuel on December 8th. Are there any questions?
Is there a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the CEO or his designee to enter into and execute a contract on December 8th, 2021 for the purchase of diesel and gasoline fuel for calendar year 2022?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. McNamee, seconded by Mr. Sheets. Tony, if you could please call the roll.
Epic,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Nunnally,
Yes.
Sheets,
Yes.
Swanson,
Yes.
Zibble.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. I will now turn the meeting over to Keith.
Okay. I'm here to ask the board for approval of the resolution authorizing the CEO or his designee to enter into a 5-year contract with Alliance Auto Gas for the purchase and delivery of propane fuel. So we. A 5-year deal. Yes. Yep. We started in 2017. So we went out to bid in 2017 for propane buses. Our first delivery was in 18, but we signed the contract in 2017. At the time, Blossman, which is Alliance Auto Gas, doing business as Alliance Auto Gas, was a winning vendor at the time. During the years, our propane has increased, and that our increases were included in this bid document. We're estimating at 200,000 gallons this year so far, well, by the end of the year. This contract will expire December 31st of this year. So Laketran, we analyzed a bunch of different strategies, different than diesel fuel, like Andrea mentioned, to determine that the best use was the Mount Bellevue price, which is basically a rack price for propane fuel. So we bid the delivery, transportation, and miscellaneous. So basically the profit, but the fuel itself was off the rack price. So unlike Andrea's diesel and gasoline, this is just the fee to the vendor, not the actual fuel. It's a fixed price. Mount Bellevue is out of Texas. It's the biggest refinery in the continental United States of propane, but people were confused. The propane isn't coming from Texas. It's still mostly from refineries, probably here in the state of Ohio. So because of this, we couldn't bid a flat rate for propane fuel. And it's just based on a weekly spot price index, which makes it easier to do a 5-year deal. So we put out an invitation to bid on January 1st of 2021. It was sent out to 19 different vendors. And in our bid document, because we're first responders and essential services, we included a keep fill requirement. So we don't drop under 7,000 gallons at any given day. If so, there's a $5,000 fine fee, which would be passed on to the vendor if we're below. We've never had that problem, but we always worry about shortages come the winter months. So these bids were due October 29th, and we received 2 bids. We had 2 bidders. One was AmeriGas. The other one was Blossman, doing business as Alliance Auto Gas. AmeriGas bid a flat fee for all 5 years, but they were unresponsive with no bid bond. Blossman, even with the 1 cent increase yearly, still never topped out above AmeriGas's. So they were the most beneficial person for Laketran. So I'll go back to this one real quick. So Andrea, the diesel fuel that Andrea talked about, there's a 47 cents federal excise tax, which we get 46-cent reimbursement for fuel used in a transit bus. If it's in one of our support vehicles, it doesn't qualify. On propane, which now is like around $1.70 a gallon, there's a 36 cents IRS tax rebate. Doesn't have to do with the federal excise tax, which is applied to propane auto gas used in a transit bus. So they're not really apples to apples, but there's a tax incentive for both of them for transit buses, if that answered your question from earlier. Lane. Okay. So our current vendor was passing that savings on to us. Our current vendor is Blossman, and we're recommending that Blossman gets the award of the contract for the next 5 years.
So basically what you're saying is they're pretty confident.
We've never run low. Deliveries are always on time.
They're confident that propane is not gonna go out of sight. They're willing to sign a 5-year contract.
That's the thing. This contract is set up to where the price of the fuel, this bid is only for the delivery and transportation of the fuel. So their markup for the next 5 years, they're making 29.5 cents per gallon delivered, no matter what the Mount Bellevue price is. So they're not bidding on the full price. So if they were charging, if the Mount Bellevue price was $1 a gallon, they would charge us $1.29.5.
So they're sticking with their delivery price.
Correct,
Big deal. I hope so.
correct.
Is there hedging not available in this market?
We didn't have hedging in this document. Actually, when I was down in Columbus at Clean Fuels, Ohio, we talked to a representative from Superior Energy. He told me that we're able to hedge after the fact, that it wouldn't affect this bid document. I talked to Lisa about it, but we had to get, not that we rushed it. We still have to purchase the fuel first, and then Lisa, we can talk with Lisa about hedging this fuel too.
So the other answer is we currently use Linwood Capital to hedge our diesel fuel. We are planning to begin hedging propane maybe this year, depending on the market. We hadn't done it in the past because we still have to have a pretty solid number of gallons we're going to use. And because our propane usage has not kind of hit its peak due to number of propane vehicles, we really didn't have a good prediction for how many gallons we would use, which is a piece of information we have to do the hedge. So we have enough buses now, we have enough usage now that we do plan to start hedging propane just like we are diesel. And hopefully we'll be able to do that within our existing contract with Linwood Capital. I know Chuck and I swung by their booth at APTA and talked to them about hedging propane. You do have to do it a little bit differently, but the answer to your question is it is available and we are planning to start it next year, depending on where the market's at.
So my recommendation is the Board of Trustees approve the resolution to enter into and execute a 5-year contract for the purchase of propane for vehicles.
So moved.
Second,
I'll read the motion just as a formality here. At this time, is there a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the CEO or his designee to enter into a 5-year contract with Alliance Auto Gas for the purchase and delivery of propane fuel?
So moved again.
second again. We were just trying to save you time.
Motion by Mr. Sheets, seconded by Ms. McNamee. Tony, if you could please call the roll.
Epic,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes,
Nunnally. Sheets,
Yes.
Swanson. Yes. Zibble.
Yes. Thank you. And Keith, you're on a roll. Please continue.
This time we're here to seek approval from the board authorizing the CEO or his designee to enter into a contract for the purchase of replacement two-way radios at a cost not to exceed $227,000. The hardest one for us. So Laketran is a participant in a countywide radio system for police, fire, and municipal trucks, vehicles, and everything since about 1999. It's also a part of what I'll call the MARC system. It's a multi-agency radio communication systems, which allows statewide radio interoperability. So we could be in Columbus and still, or Columbus, Cincinnati, and still communicate with our dispatch. The backbone goes that far through the state of Ohio. So to get to that point, the county's been upgraded multiple times over the years. It seems like about every decade they go through an upgrade. We helped the county purchase new computer backbone to operate the system in both 2000 and 2011. The 2011 upgrade was to meet FCC requirements for narrow banding. and that required a computer replacement. So we operate two different types of radios. One is called a mobile radio, which is fixed to each bus. It's actually screwed down and there's a C, it looks like a CB. Then handhelds like walkie-talkies, we call them portable radios. Some of the mobile radio, well, both radios, we've been in service since about 2005. And when we buy new buses, we transfer them from bus to bus as buses retire. If you remember, the board has passed a couple times, most recently back in October, to approve radios with a bus purchase. The FCC mandate for narrowbanding required that these radios that we've had since 2005 had to be reflashed or reprogrammed to work on that narrowbanding system. Then coming back in 2018, Motorola announced that the radios we have will no longer be available. They weren't manufactured anymore. And after 2019, they wouldn't be supported. So we can't get our radios fixed. So at that time, like I said, we started replacing radios both in bus purchases, not every bus purchase, but some of them, and as spare parts when they were needed. Then in January of this year, Ohio and the MARC system announced that the radios would have to work under a radio authentication or an encrypted style starting in July of 2025. And this eliminates people listening in to first responders or accessing the system. So Laketran at that time started evaluating more of our options. So we looked at alternatives to just replacing over 100 radios, and the cell phones cannot be an option. They operate the board's PED policy and create safety issues. You couldn't imagine having intercommunications between buses, between the EOC, dispatch, and in event of emergency, having to remember everyone's phone number or look them up. We also looked at our mobile data terminals in the buses because they're cellular, work on a mobile router, and Trapeze said that that can't be done. They still can't handle voice. They're just data terminals. So the next option we looked at was Motorola can reflash the radios to work on the system for Ohio agencies up till June of 2022. So we looked a little more into the reflashing, which costs $138.75, which is non-refundable to flash each radio. Talking to communication services, our Motorola vendor warned us to expect a higher than normal fail rate because they've been reflashed once already and they're 16 years old. So we reached out to Lake County Telecom. Their tech there, their, I guess, senior tech, told us expect 15 to 20% fail rate. And I got in touch with our Motorola person in Columbus, who's also the system manager for Marks. He estimated about 15% fail rate. So our next step was let's get a test group so I can get a decent number for the board. And the system manager for Marks strongly suggested again or warned against that. He felt that the variances in the radios, if I sent down 10 to get a number to the board of what failed or what they call bricked, I would be given false information because they can't, off of such a small sample, they can't get a good number for me to come back to the board and say what to expect to pass. So as I mentioned, the radios are only available to be reflashed for Ohio agencies. This was the MARC system communicating with Motorola. They actually had to take an old piece of equipment out of retirement, basically dust it off and get it to work so they can reflash radios up until that deadline. So if we continue with the reflashing, we thought about it and our radios would have to be done in phases. We can't either have them come in here and get our whole fleet, or we can't take them out of our whole fleet and be out of service for an extended period of time. With that, depending on their deadline, we'd probably run up to or depending on them being able to complete the work and that old piece of equipment holding together, we'd be up against a June deadline for the reflashing. We'd be past the deadline for our discount for the radios that's being offered now, which will be on the next slide. And even if we had, a 50% success rate, the radios are still 16 years old. We send about 12 to 15 in annually to be repaired, which they can't be now. And we expect that number to go up, and we'd lose the discount on the discount that's being offered now. So we started thinking about purchasing the radios. One of the reasons I'm here right now. So like I said, we've purchased radios with buses in the past. We don't project enough buses being purchased to meet the deadline for them having to be on the encrypted system. And we'd miss out on the 21% discount on cost, because that's only up till December 10th of this year. A side note on that, the radios the board approved with the buses in October, Motorola told us they would pass on that discount for those 18 radios too. So now we're at, let's purchase radios before December 10th. Back in April of 2019, Motorola offered $200 trade-in for our current radios to get the newer radios into the system. This was before Laketran knew about the encrypted system that was coming into effect. Currently, Motorola is offering $400 per radio to Ohio agencies under the MARCS program. With talking with our dealer who talked to Motorola on our behalf, we're up to $600 per radio for Laketran, based on the expected order of 96 mobile radios and 11 portable radios. So we'll be able to take advantage of a $57,600 discount on the mobiles and a $6,600 discount on the portable radios. So for the procurement, Motorola has a contract, a state contract bid pricing for this. The state competitively procures products and services for state agencies. Radios are ideal for this because the biggest purchaser of radios are government agencies. And then ComServe, our local dealer here in Paynesville, is our licensed Motorola dealer. They don't get a piece of the pie. They're held to what the state bid was. So there's no competition among Motorola dealers. Anywhere we'd go, we'd get the same price. So I did a chart, the mobile radios for 96 of them with a discount should be around $200,000, $200,700, $700. Easy for me to say. Lisa will help me. Then for the portables, we downed our need for portable radios. We had quite a few in the driver's room. Matt, Ben, and I sat down and talked about it, and 11's the right number, and that basically gets them for road supervisors, maintenance, and directors to have access to radios. We cut it down from, I think the number was around 70 to 11 of those. Our whole project cost would be $226,339.68 with a savings of $64,200 if they get a PO before December 10th. So my recommendation is the Board of Trustees to approve a resolution to enter into and execute a contract with Motorola Solutions to purchase replacement two-way radios at a cost not to exceed $227,000.
Any questions for Keith? Is there a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the CEO or his designee to enter into and execute a contract with Motorola Solutions Incorporated for the purchase of encryption-capable radios at a cost not to exceed $227,000?
So moved.
Motion made by Ms. McNamee. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Epic. Tony, if you could please call the roll.
Epic,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Nunley,
Yes.
Sheets. Swanson and Zibble.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. And at this time, I'll turn the meeting over to Ben for the 6-month look ahead.
Thank you, Brian. I will go through this somewhat quickly.
Before
In
we do
December.
that, could I ask Keith something?
Sure.
We talked about fuel. What about electricity? We've had the electric buses long enough. Are they meeting our estimation of savings? I mean, the electrical rates could go crazy too. Are they meeting our projection of what they would cost or as far as operational for the electricity? I know we haven't had a whole lot of
To be honest,
to analyze that, but
I don't feel real comfortable answering that right now. Mechanically, they're okay. The reason why on fuel, I say no, because we're still in a testing phase. We're still only charging to 80%. There's still times that we have to bring them in the garage, which is called depot charging, and plug them into a cord here, which right now is not metered. So we're not getting a full, it's metered. We get billed for it, but we can't separate it from the building.
so you don't know. That's okay. I
So
only had what? We've had how many for how long? It's been,
we phased them in probably 2 months ago. We
Okay.
started phasing them in slowly, 2 at a time. Like I said, there was balance issues. There's basically essentially 4 big batteries in the bus. And when one set of batteries is a percentage lower than the other 3, it's called going out of balance. We have to bring them into the garage here and charge them. It's part of the onboarding of the buses, learning and get them stabilized. And all that time on the chargers here, I'd give you a false energy consumption because the amount of times that we charge them in the building that aren't metered right now.
how about the charging stations? Are they all installed and working right?
All except the driveway, they're installed. They're in Paynesville. There's a problem with one cabinet. There's a problem with a cable in it that they're waiting on. It's back ordered. It's still pushing 400 amps and 300 kilowatts. So it's able to charge a bus. It's not 100% yet.
Sounds like a computer problem to me.
I blame it on that too. No, it's
Cable.
it was a fastener that was in a cable and they don't want to coat the cable with electrical tape. So,
So I guess all in all, it's working pretty good.
yeah,
Okay,
in my opinion,
all right.
not a lot of issues on the bus ends, battery ends. Maintenance is noticeably less for us. Our diesel ones are now cycling through their first preventive maintenance. It's not, I think 1 or 2 electrics have been there. So it's noticeable in the bays at least right now, but I can't give you an honest number on energy.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
I would add, the chargers that are in the garage, we are having them sub-metered. So we're not quite finished with all of the projects yet, but there will be a sub-meter on our main meter to be able to get that energy usage in the garage that just hasn't been installed yet. Any other questions for Keith before so for December, we just talked about the operating and capital budget. That'll be the operating budget and the capital plan that we will bring to the board in December for review. And then the board will be asked to approve their routine meeting schedule for next year. So it should be a relatively short meeting. January, we have a bus stop signage purchase. So I can't remember what month we talked about it, but I remember I brought a sign in here for show and tell to show the board the old bus stop sign that was very costly. You probably have seen the new ones that are out in the community. We're very happy with those. That was kind of our test batch. So this procurement would be to purchase another kind of a bigger order of those so that we can install those over time. We do install and manage those ourselves, but this is to purchase the actual signs and the poles. Talk about that in January. For February, we have 2 routine items along with 1 routine item in March. These are all just maintenance contracts for HVAC and plumbing in February, and then 1 for electrical in March. These are just routine, when something breaks, this is the person you call. We bid it out to get the kind of the rates set up ahead of time, so we're not having to pay, trip charges and, overnight fees or any kind of weird stuff that happens. This just gets a vendor on the books for us to respond to issues we have. In April, we plan to bring a presentation to the board with the operating plan and budget for Vanpool. So we are working on that behind the scenes to kind of get that ironed out. Just for clarification, that there is no Vanpool component in the budget presentation you saw today. Anything we do with Vanpool we would ask for a separate budget for that as part of the presentation. If the board said, yes, after we see how Vanpool works and all the details, yes, we do want to do it. That's when we would talk about a budget. And then we have an approval request for Ptas, which is our Public Transit Agency Safety Plan. Again, this is a routine item that we approve every year. It's required by the FTA for us to have one of these plans, and it essentially lays out the different safety programs we have at Laketran. So not a whole lot of really crazy stuff coming up in the future, but yeah. Keep on rolling. Real quick, we talked about electric buses just a second ago, but overall they're doing well. They've been on the road for I think about 4 weeks as of the date of the report. So that was as of last week. So this is the 5th week. I've had some minor issues right now. We've really worked through, like Keith talked about, the charging issues. Now, a lot of what we're making sure is kind of nailed down is the driver understanding issues. So, we've trained them a bunch of times, but it's still very new. They have to think about, I have to charge my bus, which is not something they had to think about in the past. So there's a lot of supervisor monitoring and compliance to making sure that, let's say driver A wants to get done early. So maybe they don't charge the bus at their last stop. And then driver B shows up and their bus has got half the energy it should, and they have to sit and wait, and it affects their schedule. So it's just a lot of kind of employee performance management to make sure that they are charging the buses as they're supposed to. Keith mentioned we do have a piece we're waiting for in the downtown Paynesville charger. So it's charging at about 66%. It does work, but we need that other piece to arrive. And then as you all drove in today, I imagine you saw construction of the charger at headquarters that you all approved last month. They are telling us it's a 5-week construction timeframe, obviously weather dependent. So it should be relatively quick. As with any construction project, I would expect them to be maybe not quite get to that 5-week mark, but we'll see how it goes. They've made good progress so far. I just thought I'd let the board, I haven't heard from ODOT about Geauga Transit, but they're all still out there working on the report. While talking about van pooling, while we were at APTA, we talked to a number of different transit systems, a number of different software vendors, just learning more about Vanpool, seeing what other people were doing, seeing how Vanpool was affected by the pandemic. We are still working on that. And then non-accessible vehicle testing, I know we've talked about before, but just a quick update. We're up to 6 non-accessible vehicles on the road with no issues. We should be moving up to 8 probably in the next 2 weeks or week, something like that. So we continue to test those to see how many non-accessible vehicles could fit into the fleet. And that looks like a duplicate slide from last month that I forgot to delete. Any questions about any of that going on? And that is it. We don't have a director's report for tonight, but I wanted to see, just open it up, see if there are any questions about any of the reports that were in the packet.
We do have one item on our agenda that's not reflected on the slides, and that is a committee report.
Oh,
For the Special Projects Committee. So I will turn it over to Mr. Swanson to give us a brief update.
I apologize for not putting a slide up for that. I'm sorry.
Well, we did have our first meeting and 53, sorry. We had our first meeting, 53 minutes. I'd like to point that out. And I think we managed to accomplish everything we needed to accomplish. We've got a couple of assignments. Our resident computer expert on the board, Lane, is going to do some work on trying to figure out how to get some reports out of our computer system, should we need that. And I think the rest of us are just sort of, we're going to be reviewing the slides of the changes that were proposed originally so that we can come up to speed with the physical structure, and then we'll go into discussions about what the implications of those changes would be. Next meeting is scheduled for the 17th, not the 10th, because somebody had to change their schedule. And I'm looking forward to more developments. So short report this time.
Great. Thank you very much. Is there any old business in the room? Any new business? At this time, is there a motion to adjourn? Motion made by Ms. Nunley. Anyone else? Second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Zibble. Tony, if you could please call the roll.
Epic,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
McNamee,
Yes.
Nunley,
Yes.
Sheets, Swanson,
Yes.
and Zibble.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned at 5:30. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Something to strive for. Hey, Ben, the financial projections, they were based upon getting us back to 2019 levels of service or ridership. I mean, the ridership went down like this, came back up. 2022, I'm sorry, projections that Lisa was talking about. I gathered it was projecting out greater than what we're seeing today. But does it reach the 2019, end of 2019 levels for ridership? Yeah.
It's hard to have a good answer. Yes. Yeah. Generally, yes. That's sorry.
Okay.